Hey, my friends, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. We are chipping away at the book of Matthew a little bit every weekday morning. And when I'm not chipping away at the book of Matthew or hanging out with my family, as I have told you before, one of my favorite things to do is to fly fish. There are two different types of fly fishing that I really like. One is to go out. If it's summer and it's hot, I'll just wear my jeans and some hiking shoes. I'll just walk right out into the middle of a brook or a stream. It's super refreshing, and the soundscape is wonderful. It's white noise, so you don't really hear what's going on away from the water. You're kind of locked into your own thoughts, but you can hear how the water is moving. You can even get to a place where you've done it long enough that you can hear where the fish ought to be, as ridiculous as that sounds. But I also like fishing on flat water. So you can wade out into a pond with rocky bottom, and you get there early or late, and you've got that mist rising off of it, and the water is just glassy and perfect. And you can hear what's going on in the trees and the mountains around you. You can hear the fish hitting lightly or hitting aggressively. You can hear all the mechanics of your rod. It's another beautiful place to be in terms of the intersection of the sound environment around you and your own headspace. Every now and then when you fish on a pond, of course, other people are going to wade out and be fishing there as well. And there's this interesting phenomenon that occurs there sometimes where you'll see somebody else, clear over across the water, and your brain says that is more than far enough away for me to have privacy. And so, if you're out there with somebody else, you just say things to them and carry on as you normally would. But when you're on the other end of that and you're the person who's being quiet, you realize, no, that is not far enough away. I can hear everything you're talking about. And disappointingly, over my years of fishing, I've heard a couple of unfortunate courses of conversation from people who thought they were enjoying privacy. And I guess then it's incumbent on me to walk away and actually give them that privacy. But as I've thought about that in the past, I guess my assumption would have been that because the water is so smooth, the sound maybe bounces back up off of it. There are no disruptions between you and other people across the water. And so I supposed sound would travel better. But I did a little bit of homework and discovered that that is only a small percentage of what is actually going on there. The real phenomenon that makes that sound carrying over water thing happen is called refraction. And the principle here is that on a cool pond, you're going to have cooler air at the surface. And when sound is generated, it goes in all directions. Your voice is a little bit directional, but it's not a tube of sound. It goes everywhere. Well, in this case, the sound that is projecting from a person as they talk across the water is going to behave as it normally would on an unobstructed path. But where it gets interesting is that the part of your voice that goes up a little bit in trajectory runs into warmer air. The air gets a little bit warmer the further away it gets from that cool pond, causing this refraction phenomenon to happen, and some of that sound bends over a course of time back down. And this leads me to believe that much like the phenomenon you experience when you're in an arced walk-through aquarium tunnel at the zoo or the big fancy downtown aquariums, and you can just find a spot where you're talking like, whoa, I hear somebody clear over there. It's the exact same thing. There's a sweet spot where that sound is going to bend just perfectly, so you're getting all of the horizontal sound, but you're also getting a ton of that refracted sound bending back down because of the difference in the air temperature. This is not a miracle. This is physics. And after chapters and chapters of miracle after miracle, where we look at it and scratch our heads as to how Jesus could break the laws of time and space. What are the mechanics here? How are you doing it? We get a bit of a break from that very subtly at the beginning of Matthew chapter 13, as we see Jesus, who is the maker and sustainer of all things, fully participatory in creation. We see him knowing his creation really well and figuring out how to weaponize the physics of the moment to accomplish his purposes without necessarily breaking the laws of time and space. Matthew 13, verses 1 through 3. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it while all the people stood on the shore. So on the surface, these couple of verses that are ramping us up into the third great speech around which the book of Matthew is structured, that being the kingdom parable discourse that we're about to get into. On the surface, it looks like this is just setting the stage, no big deal. But if you look a little closer, we've got some interesting details here. Jesus has tried to strategically withdraw, but he can't get away from the crowds. They cannot get enough, which is a reminder that the story of the growth of Jesus' fame and popularity and influence is a pretty dramatic one, considering in just a few pages he's gone from relative obscurity to not even able to stand on the shore and talk because people are going to crush you into the water because they just can't get enough of you. And in the rhythm that we're becoming accustomed to of circumstances presenting themselves and then Jesus doing a sign to make a point, you almost anticipate a miracle right here to make a point. But it seems like in Matthew chapter 13, the point is the parables. The teachings are enough for people to be able to see. Thematically, that's in keeping with Jesus' interactions that he had in chapters 11 and 12. Increasingly, Jesus is in a place where he's saying, who I am and what my teachings are should be enough for you to see what the truth of the matter is. So rather than getting a miracle, Jesus just employs refraction. He wasn't guessing or hoping this would work out or being like, okay, how exactly does this thing play again? I've seen this happen once or twice. No, he was present at creation. Colossians 1:16 says, for by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And all things here must include invisible things, the order of things, nature, physics, etc. So he has a thing he wants to accomplish here, and he's going to accomplish it using the physical world and his knowledge of it. I'm sure he knew exactly how far out into the water to go in the boat so that he would maximize the effect of that refraction to create this natural amphitheater effect that would make these squishy middle crowds able to clearly, audibly hear the parables he was about to communicate. So the physical side of everybody being able to hear has now been addressed, and the deeper spiritual sense of whether or not people hear will be addressed at a deeper level. This is also practically pretty important because we're getting the impression as we work through Matthew that Jesus has had to repeat a lot of the things that he said. And as the tension ratchets up and as more people want to, murder him, it is going to be more beneficial to say things in public to lots of people at once, and him seizing on the physical opportunity that came with speaking across water was one way to make sure everybody could hear what he was saying at once. And also there's a little cove just west of the town of Capernaum that I think is even called maybe the Cove of Parables or something like that, that would further work as a natural amphitheater. So Jesus is pretty clever for using these two physical phenomena in conjunction. And that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. I just think it's really cool that for this one little moment, we see Jesus take advantage of something that he built from the ground up, a system that we understandably think of as natural. But if it was made out of nothing, then even what we think of as the natural is the supernatural. But it's a different kind. But still, this doesn't count as a miracle because it is operating within the natural boundaries of things. And I think there's a fascinating contrast here between his choice to use the physical instead of breaking the laws of time and space again, as he just did a few paragraphs earlier. Next time around, we will continue girding up our loins for Matthew chapter 13 and the kingdom parable discourse it contains. And finally here, I want to offer a quick word of thanks that I think is a little different shade of thank you than I've ever communicated before here. But a few of you have hit me up in the email and communicated that you weren't sure about doing a monthly Patreon thing or whatever, and that you just wanted to kick in a little bit. And so a few of you went and did that privately here around the Christmas season, and I did not see that coming. And I'm kind of flabbergasted and humbled by the help that you kicked in there. So y'all know who you are. Thank you a ton for doing that. Thanks to all of you for hanging out with me and deep diving into stuff like this. I'm Matt. This is the 10 Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do it again soon.